So we're post-spring here, and everyone's really big-eyed and fascinated about these transfer portal guys you brought in. And it seems like an eternity ago already that the headline was all the guys Ohio State has coming back,
right,
which is your team. Those are the guys who have been here, and then you're adding guys via the portal. How important was it to get those guys back, though?
Yeah, that to me was the foundation of all of this. So after every season, you got to kind of, take a hard look at everything across the board. And, we're chasing that 1%. And the thing that I just knew that we had to do is we had to get the right people in the right seats. And that started with getting veteran guys to decide that they wanted to come back, and they're the ones who decided, it's not about like talking them into it. It's about, a bunch of guys deciding that they, want to go reach their goals this year at a high level together as a group and have a common purpose. And, the great news is we had some really talented guys that, had an opportunity to get drafted early. But the tough part with some of those is, young guys, have an opportunity to go to the NFL, which is great for them, but not always great for the youth of the veteran presence in our locker room. Well, this year is a little bit different because a lot of these guys decided they wanted to come back together. And started with Jack Sawyer and Cody Simon, and then I added to Trevion and JT and Denzel and Lathan, and so it just kind of added Emeka Buka, and before you know it, you had a pretty veteran group. And at that point, okay, what are the holes? Because some guys did transfer out. We need to fill these holes. We had a hole at quarterback, we had a hole at running back, we had a hole, at tight end, and so we needed to make sure that we were filling these holes. Then when you add on top of that, Coach Saban decides to retire, and Caleb Downs and Julian Sayin become available, and we ended up adding 6 pieces. And to me it was more about quality than it was quantity, because at Ohio State you can't just bring a bunch of guys in that locker room. There's a lot of pride here, and then you add in the recruiting class that we had, and that's the group that we have in the locker room.
People always talk about head coaches and the identity the program takes on as a result of the head coach being there. So they'll say things like a Ryan Day team, a Nick Saban team, a Kirby Smart team. I've talked about this a little on our show. What a Ryan Day team is, to me from the outside, has changed a little bit observationally, because 3 years ago you guys could hang 60 any given week, but you may need to do that because you may be giving up some points, and now you could very well have the best defense in the country this year. You guys played a couple of games last year. We were there for the Penn State game, the Notre Dame game. It was kind of a 1st to 20 type affair, and you seem totally comfortable playing that way because of what you've done defensively. Do you think that what a Ryan Day team is has evolved and changed, and is that just the way it should always be, or is it still pretty much the way you've always done it?
I think it's everybody involved with the program. I don't think it's just me. It's everybody involved. It's our staff, it's our team, and it's Mick Marotti. It's everybody in the building. First off, but I think every year you learn more and more. And being here 5 and 6 years now, like, you learn every year, and you grow every year, and you recruit towards a vision. And I really am focused this year on making sure that vision's realized. And what we want to do is we want to have the best in all areas. What I mean by that is we want to have the best players, we want to have the best development, we want to have the best coaches. And then as we go attack it, like, have the best culture. And in the recruiting process, it's the assistant coach's job and Mark Pantoni's job to identify the talent and figure out who the right fit is. For me, it's more about finding the right guys that fit our culture and who we are at Ohio State, and being able to sustain this over a long period of time. This isn't just a one and have a great year and then have a fall. You can't do that here because the expectations are so high. You're expected to win every game here, and so I think every year we've learned more and more about that. I've learned more and more about that. But to your point, it's about finding the right mixture to win games with the guys that you have. And I think we've really done a great job. It started with hiring Jim Knowles and then getting Tim Walton involved with it, Larry Johnson, and really putting that defensive staff together. You're starting to see an opportunity to have maybe one of the best defenses in the country. On offense, we've moved the ball, for a long time now, and we've been able to score points. But at the same time, like, run the football, being physical in the Big Ten, but also being able to throw the ball to be able to win the game in the playoffs is going to be important as well. So, again, finding that balance, but focusing on the things that our guys can do well and what fits our team to win games.
You talk about chasing the 1% a lot, and you guys have put up just an insane win-loss record here, and then there have been big moments where you haven't followed through on it like you want to. Internally, I know there are a million layers to the way you eval yourself and your organization. Outside, it's just, did you win the game or did you not win the game? Does it strike you how crazy it is, the complete validation that's praised upon you if you win the last game of the season versus the total indictment it is on your program if you lose it? And you got a bunch of humans in this building. How do you block that out and make sure folks, keep their racehorse blinders on and understand, yeah, we lost here. It should feel terrible, but there are specific reasons why, instead of just, we suck, burn it down, let's start over from scratch.
I think you have to enhance the things that are going well and then address the things that need to get addressed and identify the right things that need to get fixed. And I think that goes back to making sure you have the right guys in the right seat, making sure you have enough experience in the locker room. Because we have to win games in the fourth quarter and we have to win games at the end of the year. And usually you're doing that with guys who are 21, 22, 23 years old. That's just the truth. And so that was important. I think the other part is making sure the staff is exactly what we need it to be. And hiring Chip was a big deal. It really allowed me some opportunity to make sure that I'm overseeing everything, especially with everything going on in college football right now. But it's, like you said, you have to identify the things that are going well and then fix the things. And this job isn't for the faint of heart. You can be a play or two away and, feel like you're right on that cusp. But you got to make hard decisions. You got to make hard calls because that's what needs to be done to make sure that, our team is in the right situation to win all these games.
There's also a thinking, or there's a train of thought out there sometimes in like preview magazine culture that if you came really close the year before, people speak as if that's where you're starting the next year,
right,
and you just got to take that one final step. In reality, it's like you try and climb Everest, and you get 500 feet from the summit, don't make it. You got to start over from base camp the next year. So I walk around this building like I certainly don't sense any entitlement or anything like that whatsoever. But how hard is it to make sure guys understand last year's team was last year's team?
Right.
This year's team, you guys could go 8-4. Forget about starting as an 11-win team.
And that's it. And so it's really like a pyramid. That's the way I look at it. The foundation is built, and you keep building on it. You're building it all the way to the end. And if you don't finish it off, you don't just start back up there again. You got to start by laying that foundation again. And it starts with your personnel. It starts with your culture, and then it goes into the fundamentals in the spring. It builds in through the summer, and then in preseason, and you go from there. But to your point, like the easy thing to do is, well, let me just fast forward and get all the way to the end of the next season. It doesn't work that way. You have to build. And I think now more than ever, the teams that build that foundation the right way with fundamentals, with techniques, find their identity and get really good at it, are going to be the ones that are going to be best at the end of the season. The reason I say that is, in the past, when you got into the playoff system, you had about a month to prepare for that bowl game. And I always felt like, if you gave me a month, I could really go to work. I could really focus on, give me a couple weeks to really dive into this schematically. We can practice the heck out of it. I remember going into the Georgia game a couple years ago. We had like 1,400 snaps going into that game in the bowl practice.
Yeah.
And now that's not going to be the case. It's more like the NFL playoffs. You get the wild card week. But those games are going to keep coming fast. And so you have to make sure you're building the foundation the right way and building momentum with your team, because at the end, the team that has the best fundamentals, the best techniques, knows who they are, is going to win and sustain in the playoffs.
I've heard you talk a lot this spring about how you've got to prepare potentially to play like 17 games now,
yep,
as opposed to whatever the old model was any given generation. Okay, so I look at that, hey, that just may mean I work a couple of more weeks in December. You look at that, and you got to formulate an entire strength and conditioning nutrition program. You got to deviate practice reps, and you got to decide how to have guys fresh at the most important time of the year. Yet you also, I've got a schedule on the wall behind me of games in October and games in September. So how do you make sure on one hand you're building, but also realize it's not Major League Baseball? You still can't afford to lose more than one of these games.
No, you can't. And you have to build towards it, but at the same time, you have to forecast what's coming, because we haven't been through something like this before in college football. In the NFL, somebody gets hurt, you can sign somebody off of waivers and bring them in. It doesn't work that way. We only get 85 scholarship guys. So building your depth is going to be critically important. Staying healthy is going to be critically important. Understanding how the number of games we play is going to be affected. And what I mean by that is, a lot of teams in the NFL, they start in that first 4 games and they go to the second 4 games, they kind of change as, they evolve as that season goes along. When you're playing 12 games in a regular season and then, a couple games in the postseason, it doesn't typically work that way. I think this is going to be interesting to see how this shakes out this season and how teams evolve as the season goes on, not just schematically, but also personnel-wise based on injuries.
So you mentioned Chip Kelly a lot. A lot of people have mentioned Chip Kelly a lot. When you decided that you were going to go that route, I assume you didn't just say, I'm going to go hire a coordinator and I'm probably going to give up play calling. You, I would guess, looked at it and said, I'm going to go hire the right guy, and there probably aren't many of them out there that you trust enough to give that responsibility to. So how important was it to get the right guy? And when you have Chip Kelly come in, and you can trust that you've been alongside him for quite a while, and he's done it for a long time, and you can actually put that on his plate, that frees you up to do other things.
Yeah, and just going through the off season and recognizing all the things that are coming at us nowadays, with NIL and with the portal, it's a bigger ask right now for head coaches. So you have to be present with your team. You got to be on the phone, talking to folks and making sure that everything's in place for the team. And I think that's important. Yeah, but even some of the rule changes, like the 2-minute warning and things like that's all going to change schematically how things go. So I think that is going to allow me an opportunity to get freed up. But to your point, it wasn't like, you just can kind of do whatever you want in terms of like who you bring in. It doesn't work that way. And the guys in that room are very, very talented. Brian Hartline is an excellent coach, and he's going to be a very good coordinator down the road. Justin Fry is a very, very good coach. Keenan Bailey, Carlos Lachlan now, who just joined us, is excellent. So we have a great group in there. But I felt like for where we are with this team right now and where we're at, we really needed somebody who was a former head coach, who had experience either in the NFL or at the highest level of college football calling plays, because there's no experience for that. Like, there's no way you can just replace that experience. And so I identified 3 guys that I felt like were kind of in that A group, and we brought in Bill O'Brien, and I felt like he really checked a lot of those boxes for us. And he had an opportunity to go back to Boston College, where he's from, and take care of his family. And so that was hard, but at the same time, I totally understood where he's coming from. And I've known Bill for a while and think he'll do a great job at Boston College, and happy for his family that he's able to kind of stay put. And so Chip and I had conversations. He wasn't, I think, quite ready at the time when we first talked, but then talking to him about the bowl practice, he was able to coach the quarterbacks, and felt like he just wanted to get back to coaching ball again.
Yeah.
At that time, it was right for him. It wasn't easy for him leaving, his staff and leaving that team, and I think that was weighing on him the most. But since he's got here, you just see him, a guy who just has got a smile on his face. He's got a great energy about him since he's been here. The guys really enjoy being around him. He's done a great job so far with building relationships with the players, with the staff. It's going to be exciting to see how it works out. But I'll still be involved and still kind of, help with the league and, how we do things, our personnel, things that, we've done over the past few years. So going to stay involved with it that way. But I also know that when I leave, this is somebody who is so experienced and somebody that I've learned my whole life from.
When you talk about giving up certain responsibilities because there's more that's asked of you in other places, a lot of times those other places are the stuff that's not as fun as just football. I'm not asking you to complain, so we're not asking anyone to complain, but when you just do a diagnosis of what your day-to-day is, how much of it would you prefer to revert back in time? Or how much of it would you prefer to just, let's hit the fast forward button to wherever we're going to get, to where things are settled, to where my day doesn't have to look like this?
Yeah, someone told me in order to move up, you have to give up. That's just how it works. And so that's a different job description. And to your point, the reason you're named a head coach isn't always, the job description that you have to go now do isn't always why you climbed up in the profession. It's not why you got the job, and the job description that you need to do, it's not equal. So what I mean by that is like, fundraising and, team building and crisis management, public relations. Like, you list all the job descriptions for a head coach. Yeah, I like coaching the quarterbacks and calling plays. They don't translate all the time. However, I've been fortunate enough to be around great head coaches, Urban Meyer and Chip Kelly and Tom O'Brien, and Steve Adair. I've been around some great head coaches. I've learned from them along the way to say, okay, when I have this opportunity, here's kind of how I would handle things. And so, you have to kind of project that way. But the day-to-day now, as a head coach, I mean, you have to be involved with everything. You've got to be involved with the team. You've got to be involved with fundraising. You've got to be involved with pushing your staff. And I think, to me, that's probably the area that I've tried to address in the last couple of years more than any, is like making sure everybody in this building knows what the vision is and they have direction and they're being held accountable, because that's the job of the head coach, is to drive the staff, is to drive the coaches to make sure they're communicating with the players, and I think also alignment within the building, and that doesn't just happen. You got to make sure that everybody is on the same page with your culture. And it's something I've really focused on the last few months.
This is a question that you could have always asked about transfers in general. I think it's probably more prevalent with the portal now. So you guys preach culture, and I mean, to a man in the building, they'll tell you it's not just stuff on the wall. Everything that you see around here graphically is practiced. It's not just preached. Then you've got an ability to add guys from outside. And if they're talented enough to play here, you got to consider it. What's the other side? What's the flip side of that coin? The consideration of what do we do when we add this guy to our locker room? And how much do you have to worry about that? Or is it just put the best dudes in the room, the best will win, and we'll worry about the rest later?
Well, I think our overall philosophy is we want to recruit high school players, bring them in and develop them. Along the way, if there are holes or if there's a need, we're going to address it. And that's the way we've always been here. There's a couple exceptions, but for the most part, we're not going to bring in 15, 20 transfers because they're just available. That, to me, is difficult on your culture. I think our guys in our locker room have embraced it because they know that it's making them better, that we're bringing in really good players. But they also have to have, it's got to be the right fit. They have to embrace our culture. If the number one thing they're looking for is NIL, like, this is not the right place for you. If you want to be around elite-minded people who want to be the best in the world at what they do, this is the right place for you. And we recruit nationally, so we have guys from all kinds of different backgrounds in that room. And so elite people, they want to be around people who are also in the same mindset, who are elite, because you can learn from them. You can learn from their backgrounds. But also we know that, hey, like, I need the kicker. The kicker needs the three technique. The three technique needs the safety. Like, we all need to be in this thing together. And then I think once you get here, you realize what Buckeye Nation, the support that they give this team, and what Ohio State means to so many people. And then you start to see it build from there, and the guys just embrace it. And that's the brotherhood. And that's why we see so many of our former players coming back and embracing our players that are currently on the roster.
I would argue you, as an individual, may be in one of the most unique positions in this sport. Number one, you get to be the head coach at one of the premier programs in America, and that's just a blessing, full stop. But
Right.
Then you add on the expectation piece and the achievement that you've had here. But then there's that cap at the end of the year that goes one way or another. If you're a fan and it doesn't go your way, you can just sulk and not go to work for a week. But you get to cocoon yourself. You are not void of human emotion either, but the difference is you got to be accountable to an entire organization and be the face and leader of an entire organization, and you don't get a week.
Right.
You got to walk in the locker room, you got to walk to a press conference, you got to be that.
Yep.
I would imagine that's like shaking up a Coke, but then you don't twist the top. And all that pressure is built up, but you still got to look the same. You still got to act the same. And you got to be a leader for folks. How difficult is that?
Yeah, it's I mean, you know the answer. It's a challenge. But I think, when you have a setback, you give yourself about 24 hours. You have to, because you put so much into it. But then you wake up the next, no one's feeling sorry for you. Like, you got to go back to work. And I think you learn from going through difficult times. I think you learn from going through adversity. It makes you stronger. It makes you better. And you look at all the people who have had success in the world, they've gone through difficult times. Whether it's coaches, players, people in the business world, politicians, just throughout, U.S. history. It doesn't just happen. You go through difficult times and you learn and you grow. And you have to embrace that and make sure that you're making the right decisions on a weekly basis to make sure that when you get to that point next year, you're ready and that you're going to make the next step. And so that's just been the focus. And I think, when when you have that approach and you handle things the right way, and you don't overreact, but you react the right way, and then you push through that time. You work just on a daily basis, give everything you have to get back towards where you need to be. That when you accomplish your goals, it's that much more satisfying. And I learned this from C.J. Stroud. He said, "Pressure is a privilege," and man, he's so right about that. Because when you have pressure on you, it means you're relevant. It means you're living, and that's the only way to live is that way. And I love that part of it. And I work every day to try to get back to the point where we were the last year or two, where we have an opportunity to now take that next step. And that's what all this has been about this offseason. It continues to be right now.
I think that flies in the face of what outside opinion would be. Paycheck notwithstanding, if they look at your job, the normal person, the 98%, would probably look and say, oh, that pressure's got to get to you. That pressure's got to be terrible. And to them, it probably would be. You do have a certain percentage, albeit very small,
sure,
that is wired differently, and they embrace it and actually look at it and say, no, it's actually a good thing, because there are a lot of people out there with no pressure on it. Probably means they're not making a difference. Probably means they're not doing something worthwhile. I would imagine that's the exact same way that you have to go into a living room and recruit. When you talk about finding guys that are right culture fits, you got to kind of want to find guys that look at a crowded position room and view that as a positive, because it's going to bring out the best in them. I know I sound like I'm in a living room myself right now, but like there is a 2% mentality that you can build a winner with.
That's it. And Ohio State's not for everybody. It's not for the faint of heart. I mean, you have to want it, and you're going to be at the highest level. I mean, our fan base is over 12 million. I mean, the amount, we're the most watched team on TV year in and year out. And so you're going to get a lot of support, but you're also going to get some criticism, and that's part of this thing. But you have to want to be that way. You have to think differently. You have to be that alpha. And I think about where Marvin Harrison came in the wide receiver room. I think there was like 4 or 5 stars in that room. He didn't care. Ends up being the Blitnikoff Award winner, and first-round draft pick. And there's, that mindset. When Quinshon Judkins, reached out to us and said that he was interested in coming to Ohio State, the first thing I did was call Trey Van Henderson and say, Trey, we have an opportunity to maybe bring Quinshon Judkins in. What are your thoughts? And it didn't take long for him to say, Coach, if it makes us better, it's going to make me better, let's do it. I let Quinshon know, hey, Quinshon, Trey's not going, and he's not declaring in the draft. I love it. We'll push each other, we'll be better, we're a 1-2 punch. Like, that's what you want here. Now, it's not for everybody. Some guys will go other places, say, I want to be the guy or whatever. That's just one example of the mindset that you have to have here. But, you have to want it all. And, I think about CJ, for example. There was some times CJ went through some tough times here. He learned from that. He grew from that. And now I think that's a big part of why you're seeing him have so much success in the NFL right now, was because of the adversity that he hit. And that's a big part of life. And so, we talk to our guys all about that. And again, when you work through that adversity and then you succeed in the back end, it's that much more sweet because you've been through some difficult times.
When you're recruiting a guy and he's got every physical box checked and 5-star across the board in terms of how you eval a guy, but he doesn't have that mentality.
Yeah.
I think the normal approach, the normal instinct would be, all right, he's got everything I want. Let me try and get him to have that mentality. So how much of it is, now let me convince you this is why it should be the way you think, versus, okay, I found the way you think, I got to move on, this is part of the filtration process? I
think it's a great question. In the recruiting process now more than ever, because of the transfer portal, you can try talking somebody into coming to your school, but it's not a recipe for success. You open up your doors, you explain why we think that you're a great fit at Ohio State, but you explain what you're doing. Like, you're going to walk into a room, if you're a defensive end, you're going to walk in with a bunch of really good defensive ends. If you're a quarterback, you're going to walk into a room with a bunch of 5-star quarterbacks. If you're a linebacker, you're going to walk into a room with a bunch of really talented linebackers. If that's what you want, and you embrace that culture and you embrace that competitive nature on a daily basis, you're going to develop at a high level. Because, by the way, you're going to go against a really good player on the other side of the ball every day. Donovan Jackson's going against Tyleik Williams every day in practice. And that's why those two guys are going to develop to be 2 of the best players in the country next year. And hopefully both first-round draft picks. And hopefully, continue to be the best in the world at what they do. And then carry on that with the younger guys. And this is how we do things. This is the expectation at Ohio State. If that's the kind of environment that these guys want, they'll grab onto it. If you have to talk them into it, or maybe they shy away from it, then you probably don't have the right guy.
What's it like when you get high school junior at a practice fall practice, good on good.
Yeah.
It's probably Tuesday.
Yeah.
How much do you draw from watching them watch that?
I mean, you physically can watch them at one of our spring practices. They're either almost like walking onto the field, or they're just kind of taking a step back. You can physically see it. And some guys are still young; they're still figuring it out. But when I watch a guy and there's like a big rep, and he's like almost running on the field as a recruit, I'm like, this is our guy. And then they tell you right away, or they step into the rivalry game in the stadium, or big game at home on like a night game, the blackout. And they come to that game, and by the end, they're like, this is what I want. I want to be in front of 105,000 people with millions and millions of people watching across America. I want that stage. You got the right guy.
Sometimes we'll go to places, and maybe they're what you would call a little bit more developmental a program, in that true freshmen normally aren't ready to play.
Right.
They're just recruiting a different kind of athlete. And it's fun to watch. I love watching Big 12 football because it's really fun to watch, natural progression of rosters and whatnot.
Yep.
You guys are in a situation where you recruit a lot of guys who physically are gifted enough to play as freshmen. The developmental piece is still very, very vital.
Yep.
But how different is that? Maybe looking at a 6'5", 240-pound tackle and saying, he's made of the right stuff. We don't need him to play for 2 years. Versus, this is Ohio State. Like 6'5", 310 is probably what we're looking for, because we typically are not using scholarships on guys we don't think are going to be able to play for a couple of years.
Well, I think it's a great conversation because we've been talented, for a long time. We haven't always been veteran, and experienced, and just because you're talented doesn't mean you're a good football player yet. That takes time. I think the thing about having talent, I think again, I'm biased. I think we're the best in the world at developing really talented, the elite player at all positions here at Ohio State. Because when you have a talented player, your talent, we say, is God-given. God gave you your size. God gave you your speed. It's your job to develop discipline and skill. And sometimes the more talented you are, the harder it is to be disciplined or skilled. But when you get a guy like a JTT or a Cody Simon or a Caleb Downs or a Marvin Harrison or Travion Henderson, they're talented. They're also disciplined. They're also skilled. That's when you get the great player. And so we really focus on that. Your discipline is all the no talent issues, your effort, your attitude, your focus, your preparation, your perseverance, all those things. And then the skills of playing the position. And there's a lot of guys who are okay talent-wise, but are super disciplined and super skilled who are playing in the NFL, who are really good football players. And so, we have to make sure that we have that right balance of guys that are really want to focus on discipline and skill, regardless of their talent.
What's some of the stuff when you first got hired as a head coach that you thought you had a pretty good idea about, that now several years in, you could look back and tell that version of yourself, man, you had no idea about this or that, what it's really going to take?
Yeah. You, as much as you prepare, you don't really get a feel for how important your coaches are. I mean, they're the ones that are with the guys on a constant basis. They're the ones talking to the players on a constant basis, building relationships, making these decisions every day about recruiting, about relationships with players, about motivation, about schematics, all these little decisions constantly, and they just build and build and build and build. And that really defines your team. And so it's your job as the head coach to make sure that you're on that. You have a feel for all those many decisions that are being made and making sure that it's aligned with the culture and that the guys are doing a great job. And so I've been really much more thoughtful and deliberate about hiring guys to make sure that we have the right fit at Ohio State. Because to me, you may not notice that here at Ohio State until a matchup game, but you quickly learn how important those decisions are.
I grew up in rural Georgia, just across the Chattahoochee River from Alabama. So I grew up really close to the Iron Bowl. And that gets really, really pumped in you, and you're immersed in it as a kid in the South. I would hear about Ohio State, Michigan. I would watch it on TV. Only recently have I been able to come to the last 2 or 3, or however many we've been to. Describe for someone who loves the sport, but they've never been in that rivalry, what that's like. Because even just standing on the field, from an intensity standpoint, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, it started for me in 17. We were playing up there, and JT Barrett got hit by the camera before the game.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, you don't quite understand. You watch it on TV, but you don't quite understand it. Before you know it, Dwayne Haskins is in the game. We're battling our tail off and end up winning the game. He ends up stepping up in a big way and showing some great toughness. Defense played really good that game. And then, the next year, we had a great day out here, had 62, and that was a big day. And you just, and then we played up there the next year in 19. That was a heck of a game. You could just feel the impact that Fields had. I mean, it's about toughness. That game is about physicality, and like he got his knee taken out, put a knee brace back in. 2 plays later, throws a touchdown pass in the back of the end zone to Garrett Wilson. And J.K. Dobbins played tough that game. We got a couple 4th down stops. It's about the physicality and the toughness of that game. And we've let a couple of those games get away from us there in a couple of years, and for different reasons. I just think that when you're in that game, you just realize how much is riding on that game. And so there's this fine line of putting your whole world into it, but also you just got to let it go. You got to go attack in that game. You can't sit back and start to think about everything that comes with the game, because it is there's a lot that rides with that game, and certainly we all know that here, and we embrace it. We live it every day of our lives here. But I think for us, it's about attacking. And I think that's something that I've learned the last couple of years, and just making sure that we're going after these guys every single day. But when it comes time to play the game, it's going to be that way, because it is intense. And it's going to come down to the 4th quarter, and the team who's stronger in the end is going to win.
What's amazing to me is we could come up here in spring. I could watch 7-on-7 work. I could watch quarterbacks throw to wide receivers. I could go to summer workouts, and it's 92 degrees outside, and you're watching guys in shorts, no shirts, and everything looks great. But that's leading to several months from now, a 34-degree day with light to moderate snow maybe falling, and it's like the conditions that you're preparing for that in are so different than the conditions that it's going to be played in down the road. I remember the first time we came to that game a few years ago, it was up there, and I'm standing on the field before the game thinking, I can't believe that's how this leads up. Like that's the summer workout leads to this right here. I was freezing. I'm looking at a quarterback thinking, that guy's got to play with precision today. Right. That guy's got to make good decisions in this environment today. When do you know, by the way, that you've got the team that is going to be able to do that? Because like you said, it comes down to a few bounces here and there. Yep. And you could never know those bounces are coming 4 months prior. When do you start to feel like this team right here has the right mentality? I trust this team. They can go get it done.
Yeah, I think, I think you always go into a game feeling that way. If you don't, you got the wrong team. I just think that, it's going to come down at the end of the game to, who's there in the 4th quarter, and who understands that this is, you got a long season, right? You got 11 games that lead up to that. And those games are all important. But ultimately, are you playing your best football right then and there? Are you playing your best football in the second half of that game? And you don't quite know until you get there. You try to prepare them the best you possibly can and put together a good plan. But we want to make sure that we're letting the guys be successful, and we're letting them make an impact on the game. Sometimes I think as coaches, we can put too much scheme into the game, or we can try to get too cute about it, overthink it. This is about letting our players play and impose their will.
All the football stuff notwithstanding, it's a vast majority of your life. Is there something that you may have that you think you're pretty good at that no one knows about? Like, I'll give you an example.
Okay.
I'm a believer that I'm not telling you I'd win, okay, but if I were in a combat situation with a shark, let's just say, in the ocean, not far enough offshore where I can't touch the ground, so I can touch the ground, so I have my feet under me, I think I could do okay, because I think it's an eye gouge. Like that, it's an eye gouge situation. What is a situation, a setting that you think you could be in? A talent that you have that they don't know about, but they need to know about it.
Oh, jeez, I don't know. You got me with this one. I don't know. I mean, that's a one-off right there, fighting a shark.
Hopefully a none-off. Hopefully a none-off. I just think I'd be good.
Yeah, what I've been doing recently is just reading a lot of books, and that's when I get my free time. I wish I could think about things like that, but I don't. I'm trying to figure out, how to motivate this team and how to find that last, 1 inch. And, I will say that for me, one of the things that, you have to get away every once in a while. You have to just clear your mind, because usually when you come back, you're coming back with a clearer mindset, a clearer perspective. Yep. And so for me, a lot of times it's traveling. We love to travel, my wife and I and the kids. So we try to get away and see as many places as we can. Last year we went out to Montana and to Big Sky and Jackson Hole, and that was fun, being out there and seeing those type of things. And I could see myself living out there if I wasn't coaching football, and kind of live in that world.
The Yellowstone life.
Yeah, I could. I'm not going to. I'm a football coach, but I could totally see myself being out there in that environment. And when you watch Yellowstone and that kind of environment, being out there was really fun, and it was really great. Just how big it is out there, and dangers around every corner. It's a beautiful place.
Do you have an idea, a loose concept in your mind, of how long your career is? A lot of guys picture themselves as 70 years old, right, and what they're doing when they're 70 years old. Some guys just picture themselves coaching forever. Right. Other guys say, I'll coach for a little while, then I'll venture into this portion of my life. Do you view your life like that, or just one day at a time?
A little bit of both. I want to be at Ohio State for a long time, and I know a big part of that is winning championships, and that's why, that's where all my focus is and our focus is right now. We love it here. It's a great place. Columbus is a great place. The people of Ohio are great. And so, we got to win championships here. That's just how it goes. And so we're going to work our tail off to get that done, and be here as long as we can. But when I start to think past all of that, I think about being around my family, being around the kids, being around Nina, and just doing what makes us happy. And this job, I love this job. And if you don't win championships, they're going to find another coach. I get that. But at the end of the day, it's about the impact you have on people and the platform that Ohio State has to offer, and the impact you're having on the kids and the staff and all those types of things. And no matter how it all shakes out, I want to make sure I'm always doing that, because to me, that's what you put 2 feet on the ground every day coming out of bed. What motivates you, and that's what motivates me ultimately, is to continue to do that, to have an impact on people and to help people in Buckeye Nation. But in order to do that, you got to win games, and so we have to make sure we're doing that at the highest level. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's kind of how I think.
Well, that's the weird part, because we talked 20 minutes ago about how ultimately it's just, did you win a championship or did you not? If you didn't win a championship, it's Ohio State, you should have. Failure of a season.
Right.
That's how a fan would think about it. And to a certain degree, you look at it and say, we were capable of doing this, and we didn't, so we fell short. But also, you get to see inside your walls, and there are 3,700 other compartments where hey, this guy right here really developed and blossomed this year. That's an individual win. This coach furthered his career. He got an opportunity. That's an individual win. Which, to me, if I were in your shoes, is what would anger me the most, is I get judged just based on whether I win a title or lose a title. And that's fair in one sense, because I've got all the resources. So to whom much is given, much is expected. But there are other areas that indicate giant green check mark. This was a success. This was a success. How do you sort of balance that stuff and not go crazy with people just saying success or failure, whether you won the last game of the season or not?
Yeah, well, when you're at a place like Ohio State, first off, when you have 12 million fans, even if 95% are feeling good about things, 5% is what, almost 500,000.
A very vocal 5%.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's a lot of people. That's some people's fan bases. So it comes with the job. You have to have thick skin. That's just the bottom line, because what people see isn't always reality about a lot of these things. And but it's part of the job, and that's why when you sign your name to do the job, that's what comes with the job.
Right.
And no one's going to feel sorry for you. That's what I signed up for. It's the way I want it. I want people to want us to win every single game. That's because that's what we want. That's what I want. I want to win every game, and when we don't, it is a failure. We got to make sure that we're doing that. That being said, the reason why you wake up in the morning every day is to have an impact on people's lives, and nothing makes me happier as a coach than, first off, seeing my family happy and seeing the team happy, but also seeing Buckeye Nation happy and the fans who are celebrating on Saturdays after a win. That to me is something that just drives me on a daily basis. I have this vision in my head of us, holding up the national championship or celebrating against the team up north, and just everybody in Buckeye Nation, 12 million strong, celebrating on a Saturday night, singing the fight song. And to me, again, those are the visions I think about. And it's what, again, motivates you on a day like today, sitting here in April.
Yep. One more thing here. I watched the spring game. I'm not going to draw a ton from it, but I'm just looking at the quarterback position. Since I have you here, I'll ask you instead of guessing myself. What does that quarterback room look like? What does the quarterback position look like right now exiting spring?
Well, first off, the room is strong. Those guys have a really good synergy about the room. And when you have 5 guys in a room, that's not always easy, but they're working well together. It's competitive. It's talented. I think Will brings in some experience with the fact that he's won a Big 12 championship before. Devin's been in the program now for 3 years. So they both have experience, one in the program, one outside the program, but both pushing each other to make each other better. Lincoln and Julian are both green, both talented. Lincoln was a 3-sport athlete, Gatorade Player of the Year coming out of South Dakota, Major League Baseball product, excellent basketball player. Didn't play football year-round there. So he got in the summer, wasn't here last spring, and so he's still even been here for a year, which is crazy to think about. And he's growing and building, and you can see the talent there. And then you have Julian and Air, and both guys talented, both come from areas of the country where they play football kind of year-round. So they're a little bit further along that way, but still really young and still figuring it out. But I've been impressed with their approach, and it's hard to get everybody reps. I mean, that's probably the hardest part about that room when you have 5 guys getting 5 guys reps. So we did roll those guys in the spring. We'll have to prioritize them a little bit more in the preseason.
Ryan Day, we appreciate it, man.
You got it, brother. Take care.